Hi, I'm Shalane from TSC Tuition, and today we are going to talk about 3 prompts for 3 very popular VCE texts in 2025. But first, let me mention that if you are looking for English tutoring support, our team of English tutors would love to help you out. We specialize in one-to-one English sessions delivered in an online format. So if that's the kind of support you're looking for, contact us on our website or leave a comment and we'll get in touch with you. The first prompt that we're going to look at is for Oedipus the King or Oedipus Rex. And the prompt is, pride is ultimately to blame for the tragedy of Oedipus the King. Do you agree? As I mentioned in an earlier video, if a question is a do you agree kind of question, it's asking a debatable point. It's not asking you how something is true, it's asking you whether something is true or whether you agree with something. So in this case, the absolutist term, as I mentioned in an earlier video, here is ultimately. When we talk about ultimately, it means where should the majority of the blame be? What should we attribute, right? To what should we attribute most of the blame? In this case, the prompt is asking, is it pride? Now, if we think about the text, pride definitely plays a very large role in the downfall of Jocasta and Oedipus. If we think about the story, that is, one of their tragic flaws, and that is not really a point of debate. However, the prompt here is not asking you whether or not pride had a role. It's asking, is pride the biggest contributor? Is it the thing that is most responsible or the thing that's totally responsible for what happens to them? Now, I think even if you don't know the text very well, you will know that what happens to Jocasta and Oedipus is partly because of the prophecy, right? There was a prophecy about them that sort of predicted all of the horrible things that they would eventually do. And that's not really their fault, right? It's not really their fault that the prophecy predicted all of these things or foreshadowed all of these things. So there is a point of contention there, or a point of debate about, was it pride or was it the prophecy? So that's something that the student will have to unpack and discuss and debate in their essay. Now, because this is a do you agree essay, my suggestion is, if you're tackling this prompt, that you devote at least one paragraph to whatever it is that you decide in the end. So if you decide that yes, pride is ultimately to blame, you need a paragraph about something that's not pride that also contributes to their downfall. If your ultimate position is that no, pride is not to blame, or pride is ultimately not to blame, then you need at least one paragraph about pride as well being a contributing factor to their downfall. So the trick, remember, with a do you agree question is that there are always going to be areas of gray, right? There's going to be sort of that in-betweenness where it's like, oh, maybe not, I don't know. So you want to find that area and at least talk a little bit about it before you land on an ultimate conclusion. The second prompt that we're going to look at is for the text, "We have always lived in the castle." And the prompt is, Jackson portrays masculine values as ideologically opposed to female power in "We have always lived in the castle." Discuss. Now, this is a discuss question, and as I said in our previous video, a discuss question is not asking whether or not you agree with something. A discuss question is really asking how or why is something true. So if we look at this prompt, that Jackson portrays masculine values as ideologically opposed to female power, what it's really asking is, how does Jackson portray masculine values as ideologically opposed to female power? And to some extent, why does Jackson portray masculine values as ideologically opposed to female power? If we look at the keywords in this prompt, it's pretty clear that the keywords here are masculine values, female power, and ideologically opposed. If we think about those three key words, it becomes clear that we really need to define what does it mean by ideologically opposed. So if we look at that phrase, ideologically opposed, or ideology, just to keep it a little bit more simple, we're really talking about the belief systems. We're talking about value systems. We're talking about sets of beliefs. We're talking about really the ranking of priorities, right? What's important and what's not as important. If we think about the text, masculine values are very much represented by Cousin Charles. We look at him and we can see that what he represents, what he wants, what he believes in, what he prioritizes, what he is really desperate to get is totally not what the sisters value. It is totally at odds with what Constance and Mary Cat want for their lives, for their family, for their house, what they want to do with all the stuff that they've got. So looking at the text, we have to talk about, well, how does the author, Jackson, compare and contrast, and how do they come into tension with each other in the text? So obviously Cousin Charles intrudes, right? He's very much an invader into the house. So there's something that you can talk about, that it is always portrayed as some sort of invasion. It's in very hostile terms, particularly with the way that Mary Cat receives him, maybe not so much Constance, at least at the start anyway. So that is something that the student will need to discuss. Part of this is also the authorial intention, because the prompt asks Jackson portrays, right? It's not just that these things are portrayed, it's that author portrays these things. So the student, a high scoring student, will have to talk about, well, what was the intention behind it? How does the author do this? And why would the author do this? Our third prompt is for the film text Sunset Boulevard. And the prompt is, Sunset Boulevard shows that truth exists as a spectrum rather than a black and white reality. Do you agree? So in this case, the prompt is asking about truth and the nature of truth. The student can pick up on that idea of truth as a spectrum in terms of truth being somewhat relative, at least in the text, right? What is true to Joe is not necessarily true to Norma. Obviously, what Joe does in his day-to-day life before he met Norma is not quite what Norma believes. She believes that he is quite successful. She believes that he is quite capable of doing what she wants him to do. So that's one area of it. But then on the flip side of it, there are objectively truthful things and objectively false things for everybody in the movie. So for example, all the fan letters that Norma writes, they're not really fan letters. They are not objectively anything that she thinks that they are. So there are outright lies and deception, and there are lots of shades of grey in whether or not something is true. And what this question is asking the student to do is to examine that and to land on one or the other. Students here should also try and write one body paragraph that runs counter to their ultimate conclusion. So if the student is going to argue that truth is a spectrum rather than black and white, there needs to be a body paragraph about, there are some bits of truth that and reality that are very black and white that cannot be argued against. And if the student wants to argue the other way, that truth is black and white or reality is, ultimately black and white in the film, then they need at least a body paragraph where they discuss reality or truth being more of a spectrum. So students need to find that balance between making their points and supporting their points, and also discussing counter arguments as well. So high scoring students, I think, should also talk about the nature of black and white film and the cinematic techniques that we find in the film. Truth and reality are presented in very particular ways. The way that the camera looks and portrays the sets, the characters, their costume, the lighting, all of that come together to present a certain version of this world. Now, it is totally up to the student to argue whether or not that is a truthful representation of this world, or if it's not a truthful representation of this world. Either way, there needs to be some discussion in the essay. So I hope that was helpful. If you like this video and would like to see some more, check out our other videos and make sure you subscribe, like, follow all of our social media channels. These days we are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're looking for one-to-one English tutoring, please get in contact with us via our website. You could also visit our shop for more study materials for VCE English and EAL. That's it from me. Thanks for watching.